You're now looking at the Jungfrau in the Swiss Alps, standing at 4,158 meters. It's one of Europe's most iconic snow-covered peaks. From here, you can admire glaciers, valleys, and lakes, an unforgettable panoramic view. Riding the cogwheel train to the top of Europe is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Whether hiking in summer or skiing in winter, this is a paradise for nature lovers. Emma had been waiting for this evening all week. It wasn't just another dinner. For her, it felt like a chance to step into a different world. She checked her small purse, carefully counting the few notes inside. $5. That was all she had. She knew it wasn't enough, not even for a full meal in a cafe like this. Still, she came. She didn't want to cancel. She wanted to try, even if she looked foolish. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans and fresh bread. Warm light glowed from the ceiling lamps. People spoke softly around her. Couples laughed, and spoons tapped against cups. Emma kept her head down, her fingers brushing the strap of her purse again and again. She thought of her small apartment, the unpaid bills, and how rare it was for her to dress up and go out. Tonight, she had decided to take the risk. Maybe her date would understand. Maybe he wouldn't. She told herself to stay calm. She adjusted her simple blouse, tucked her hair behind her ear, and waited. Across the cafe, a man sat with a little boy. He noticed her quiet presence, though she did not see him yet. Emma opened the menu slowly. Her eyes moved over the neat list of dishes, each with prices higher than she expected. Her chest tightened. Even the simplest drink cost more than what she carried in her purse. She swallowed hard and closed it quickly, afraid someone might notice her hesitation. Other tables around her felt alive. Couples leaned close, sharing smiles and private jokes. Glasses of wine sparkled in the soft light, and plates of food carried scents that made her stomach ache with hunger. Emma tried to look calm, but inside she felt small and out of place. She glanced again at her purse, her hand tightening around it. She thought of the $5 inside, a sum that felt both heavy and useless in a place like this. What would happen if her date came and ordered freely? What would she say when it was her turn to pay? Her cheeks grew warm at the thought. She breathed slowly, telling herself to wait, to give the evening a chance. She had promised herself she would not run away. She could at least try. Across the room, the man in the suit watched her quietly. His young son tugged at his sleeve, whispering something that made the man smile. Though his eyes never left Emma, Daniel had chosen the cafe for a simple dinner with his son. Liam, it was a routine he kept whenever his schedule allowed. His work as a CEO often left little time for quiet evenings, but tonight he wanted to give his son attention. Liam sat across from him, swinging his small legs under the chair, a playful grin on his face. As they waited for their food, Daniel's gaze drifted toward the corner table. He noticed the young woman sitting alone, her posture straight but tense. She kept touching her purse, then the edge of her blouse, then the menu, as if each movement could calm the worry she carried. Daniel recognized that look. He had seen it before in people struggling to hide their difficulties. Liam followed his father's eyes and whispered, "She looks sad, Papa." Daniel gave a soft smile and nodded. "Maybe she's just waiting for someone," he replied. But inside, something about her quiet struggle caught his attention. She was not loud, not demanding. She sat silently, as though afraid to disturb the world around her. Daniel had wealth, more than he ever needed. Yet here he saw someone counting every cent, trying to hold on to dignity in a place that could easily overwhelm. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Liam rested his chin on the table and giggled softly, his young eyes still watching Emma. The door opened, and Emma's heart gave a small leap. A man stepped in, glancing around before spotting her. He raised a hand in greeting, his steps unhurried, almost careless. He wore jeans and a wrinkled shirt, his hair untidy as if he hadn't bothered much for the evening. Emma stood halfway, forcing a small smile. "Hi," she said softly. He gave her a quick nod and slid into the chair across from her, stretching back as if the cafe were his living room. "Sorry I'm late," he muttered, already picking up the menu. Emma sat down, folding her hands tightly in her lap. She tried to ignore the wave of unease that washed over her. This was supposed to be a blind date, arranged by a friend who insisted it might be good for her. She wanted to trust that, wanted to believe she could meet someone who saw her worth. But already, she felt something distant in his manner. The man began to talk about himself, barely looking at her. His words came quickly, as though filling silence with his own stories. Emma nodded politely, though her eyes dropped often to the table. She wondered if he noticed her nervousness, or if he cared. Across the café, Daniel and Liam continued their quiet dinner, though Daniel's gaze returned again and again to the scene unfolding at Emma's table. The waiter arrived with a polite smile. Emma's date leaned forward, pointing to items on the menu. He spoke quickly, ordering for himself without a pause, choosing a starter, a main dish, and a drink. When the waiter turned to Emma, she froze. Her fingers trembled slightly against the menu. She opened her mouth, but closed it again, her mind racing. She couldn't afford anything here, not even the cheapest drink. Her $5 felt like a secret shame burning in her purse. "Just water, please," she whispered. The waiter gave a short nod and wrote it down before leaving. Her date didn't seem to notice. He leaned back, talking about his job, his hobbies, his friends. Emma listened, nodding, her cheeks burning with quiet embarrassment. At the next table, Daniel watched. He saw her hesitation, the way she pressed her lips together, the quick glance at the purse before she spoke. He felt his chest tighten, a quiet ache at the sight. Beside him, Liam leaned close and whispered, "Papa, she didn't order food. She looked hungry." Daniel gave his son a small smile and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. The night was still unfolding, but Daniel already knew he could not sit still. Something inside told him this was a moment that mattered, not only for her, but also for himself. The food arrived. Plates were set before Emma's date, steaming with rich aromas. He picked up his fork quickly and began to eat, talking between bites. Emma folded her hands in her lap, her glass of water untouched. She lowered her eyes, as though hiding behind the silence she carried. Her date hardly noticed. He spoke of his long week, his plans, his preferences. He laughed at his own words, never once pausing to ask if she wanted anything, never once noticing the way her shoulders slumped lower with each passing minute. Emma's stomach tightened with hunger. The smell of roasted chicken and buttered bread filled the air, but she sat quietly, forcing a faint smile whenever her date looked her way. She thought of her $5, safe in her purse, yet useless here. Her mind whispered to her to leave, but her heart told her to endure, at least until the evening ended. At the nearby table, Daniel observed. He noticed her stillness, her lowered gaze, the way she nodded out of politeness but never spoke much. Liam tugged at his sleeve again, whispering, "Papa, she looks sad. Why doesn't she eat?" Daniel gave a slow breath. His eyes softened, and he knew a decision was forming quietly within him. Emma excused herself softly, slipping from the table as her date waved her off without looking up from his plate. She walked toward the door, her steps quiet, her figure small against the cafe's warm light. Outside, the air was cooler. The street lamp cast a pale glow, outlining her as she stood alone on the sidewalk. She tilted her head upward, staring at the dark night sky scattered with faint stars. A heaviness pressed at her chest. She blinked quickly, fighting the sting of tears. She had wanted to believe in this evening, wanted to hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But instead, the night reminded her of her limits, of the fragile line she walked each day. She gripped the strap of her purse tightly. Inside were $5 small, the weight of which felt both real and meaningless. She whispered to herself, telling her heart to be strong. Just a little longer, she thought. Then she would go home, back to her quiet world, where no one expected more than she could give. Through the cafe window, Daniel noticed her standing beneath the street lamp. Her figure looked fragile, her head bowed, her shoulders trembling slightly. Something inside him stirred deeper now. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. He saw the quiet courage in her, and it moved him in ways he hadn't expected. Emma returned to the cafe with slow steps. She opened the door and slipped back into her seat, forcing her lips into a faint smile as if nothing had happened. Her date barely looked up. His fork moved quickly, his voice still filling the air with stories about himself. Emma folded her hands again, nodding politely, her heart sinking further. The waiter passed by, setting down another drink for her date. Emma lowered her eyes, thankful he hadn't asked her again about food. She sipped her water, the cool taste reminding her of how little she had compared to the world around her. Daniel watched quietly. He noticed the faint redness in her eyes, the way she adjusted her blouse as if to hold herself together. Liam leaned close and whispered again, "Papa, can we help her?" Daniel looked at his son, then back at Emma. His chest warmed at his child's innocence. You're now looking at the Jungfrau in the Swiss Alps, standing at 4,158 meters. It's one of Europe's most iconic snow-covered peaks. From here, you can admire glaciers, valleys, and lakes, an unforgettable panoramic view. Riding the cogwheel train to the top of Europe is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, whether hiking in summer or skiing in winter. This is a paradise for nature lovers. He gave Liam a gentle nod, a promise that something would be done. For now, he waited. He didn't want to embarrass her, didn't want to make her feel smaller. He wanted to find a way that gave her dignity, a way that reminded her she was worth more than this moment. At last, the plates were cleared. Emma's date leaned back, stretching with a careless grin. He glanced at his watch and muttered, "I've got other plans tonight. Good to meet you, though." Without waiting for a reply, he stood, dropped a few bills on the table, and walked away. Emma sat still, stunned. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. She stared at the empty chair across from her, her heart sinking in silence. The cafe swarm chatter continued around her, but she felt the weight of eyes, the weight of being left behind. She pressed her palms together, trying to steady herself, to stop the trembling inside. Her purse lay beside her, with its $5 lonely. She thought of using them to at least cover her water, but her date had tossed down enough money to pay for what he had ordered. Still, the sting of humiliation burned deeper than anything else. Across the cafe, Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen enough. He leaned slightly toward Liam, who gave him a hopeful smile, as though knowing his father was about to act. Daniel's heart beat heavier. He could not sit idle while someone so quietly strong was left in such a place of shame. Tonight, he decided, would not end this way for her. Daniel pushed back his chair and rose, his steps calm and steady. The soft murmur of the cafe carried on as he walked toward her table. Emma looked up, startled by the shadow that fell across her. Her eyes met his, and she saw a man with kind eyes, his expression calm but warm. "Excuse me," Daniel said softly, his voice steady, respectful. "I couldn't help noticing you were left waiting here. Would you mind if I sat for a moment?" Emma blinked, her breath catching. She hesitated, unsure what to say. No stranger had ever spoken to her with such gentleness before. She glanced quickly around, then gave a small nod. "Of course," she whispered. Daniel pulled out the chair, sitting across from her with ease but no arrogance. His smile was faint, reassuring. "I'm Daniel," he said simply, "and my son over there is Liam." He gestured toward the boy, who waved cheerfully from their table. Emma's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. "I'm Emma," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She lowered her eyes, still uncertain of his intent, but Daniel leaned forward slightly, his tone kind. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I think no one should sit alone after an evening like that." Emma sat quietly, her fingers still curled around her purse. Yet something in Daniel's calm voice softened her. He did not rush her. He did not speak over her. Instead, his words felt gentle, like a hand extended in kindness without demand. "You've had a hard evening," he said softly. "I can see it. But sometimes, a night doesn't have to end the way it begins." His eyes carried no judgment, only quiet understanding. Emma's lips parted, but she found no reply at first. She had not expected anyone to notice her, much less a stranger who seemed to care. Slowly, her hands unclenched, resting on the table instead of gripping her purse. She let out a small breath, as though releasing the weight she had carried since she walked in. Across the room, Liam waved again, his bright grin stretched wide, his small hand moving eagerly in greeting. Emma blinked, then smiled softly, lifting her hand to wave back. The sound that followed surprised her quiet laugh, light and unguarded. It was the first time that night her voice held ease. Daniel's expression warmed as he saw her smile. For him, that small moment felt more valuable than any success he had earned in business. It was real, it was human, it was a reminder of what truly mattered. The waiter approached, setting down Liam's dessert at the other table. Daniel raised a hand gently. "Would you mind bringing the menu again?" he asked. His tone was calm, certain. The waiter nodded and returned quickly. Daniel opened it, then glanced at Emma. "You should eat," he said simply. "It's late, and you've had nothing." Emma's eyes widened. She shook her head quickly. "Oh, no, I can't. I shouldn't." Her voice trembled as she spoke, the instinct to refuse stronger than her hunger. She thought of her $5, of the shame of being unable to pay. But Daniel smiled, patient. "It's not about what you can or can't. It's about what you deserve. Everyone deserves a meal tonight." His voice was steady, leaving no space for argument. He turned to the waiter and named a simple dish, something warm and filling, not chosen to impress but to comfort. Emma sat stunned. She wanted to protest again, but her throat tightened. No one had spoken to her like this before, as though her dignity mattered more than anything else. Slowly, she nodded, her eyes lowered, her voice quiet. "Thank you." Daniel leaned back, giving her space. He did not make it grand. He made it natural, as though kindness should be the rule, not the exception. And in that moment, Emma began to believe it could be. The waiter returned, setting a warm plate before Emma. The steam curled upward, carrying the comforting scent of herbs and fresh bread. For a moment, she only stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. Then, with a quiet breath, she picked up her fork. The first bite was slow, almost hesitant, but the flavor brought tears to her eyes. She ate carefully, politely, but with the unmistakable hunger of someone who had gone without for too long. Each bite eased something in her, not only her stomach, but the ache she carried in her heart. Daniel sat across from her, saying little. He wanted her to eat in peace, without feeling observed, yet his eyes held quiet joy. Beside him, Liam smiled brightly, whispering, "She looks happy now, Papa." Daniel gave a small nod, his chest warmed by his son's words. The cafe had grown calmer. Some couples had left, leaving the space quieter, softer. The low light wrapped the room in a gentle glow. For Emma, it felt as though the world had slowed down, giving her a moment of rest she had long needed. She glanced at Daniel once, meeting his kind eyes, and whispered again, "Thank you." Her voice carried gratitude deeper than words could hold. When Emma's plate was empty, Daniel spoke again, his tone light. "Would you join us for dessert? Liam has been waiting to meet you properly." Emma's eyes widened, hesitation flickering across her face. She wanted to refuse, wanted to protect the fragile walls she had built around herself. But Liam's eager wave from their table broke through her hesitation. His smile was too bright, too innocent to resist. Slowly, she nodded. Daniel stood and guided her gently toward their table. She sat down, still shy, her hands folded in her lap. Liam leaned forward immediately, his eyes wide with excitement. "Hi, I'm Liam," he said cheerfully. "Papa says you're Emma. Do you like ice cream?" Emma blinked, then laughed softly. "Yes, I do." Liam grinned. "Good, then we can share." His words were simple, but they carried a warmth that melted the last of Emma's unease. She smiled more freely now, the sound of her laughter filling the quiet space around them. Daniel watched the two of them with a gentle smile. He had not planned any of this, yet as he saw Emma and Liam share a small moment of joy, he felt something shift inside him. The night had brought them together by chance, but it no longer felt like chance. It felt like the beginning of something that mattered. The cafe had grown nearly silent. Only a few tables remained occupied, and the soft hum of music filled the background. Emma sat beside Liam, her face gentler now, her eyes brighter. She no longer clutched her purse. Her shoulders were no longer heavy with tension. Daniel watched her as she spoke with his son. Each word came more easily, her laughter quieter but freer. She looked like someone who had been holding her breath for years and was finally able to exhale. When the time came to leave, Emma stood slowly. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "I came here tonight with only $5. I thought I would leave humiliated. Instead, I'll never forget this." Daniel smiled softly. "You don't need to thank me. Sometimes life brings people together for a reason. Tonight was one of those times." He offered his hand, not with expectation but with respect. Emma looked at it, then placed her hand in his, her grip gentle but sure. Liam beamed, slipping his small hand into hers as well. "Now we're friends," he said cheerfully. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but they were no longer from sorrow. They were from something new. Hope. The night had begun with fear and ended with warmth. She walked out of the cafe no longer alone, but with a bond that promised a brighter tomorrow.